The pastor search process begins with the pastor nominating committee being elected, and the first act of the PNC is to write a MIF, a ministry information form. The pastor nominating committee is an act of the congregation, so it's under the authority of the congregation along with the Commission on Ministry. Once a PNC has been elected, it will be the responsibility of the COM liaison to train the PNC. And we have some helpful documents, both from General Assembly on calling a pastor, as well as our own personal PNC training notes that we give to COM liaisons that they can share with the PNC or the APNC. Once the PNC has been elected and trained, they begin to write the ministry information form. That ministry information form is laid out by the CLC process, and we have a MIF form that we will give you. We have MIF instructions that we will give to you to give to the PNC. It's all laid out nice and clear, right, in that way that Presbyterians do. Now, once the ministry information form has been completed, at least they think it's completed, it gets sent to COM and also gets sent to session. Session needs to affirm that the terms of call listed in the MIF are within the congregational budget. We want to make sure that there's coherence there between what the session thinks they can afford and what the MIF actually says about the pastoral search. That MIF is also sent to the Commission on Ministry, and again, this is a dialogical process. Before we approve it, we sometimes push back a little bit here, a little bit there. Maybe they haven't said something with sufficient clarity, or maybe they've said something that actually violates our polity. It happens. Oftentimes the MIF that we receive is just spot on, and we send it back to them and say, go forth, upload it to the CLC. Now the PNC chair uploads the MIF to the CLC, and I have to give the PNC chair a special login and password. So you'll have to be in touch with me at that time to enable that process. Once the PNC chair uploads the MIF to the CLC, then both the clerk of session and I have to approve the MIF. It's our checks and balance system. It's the accountability within the denomination to make sure that we don't have a rogue PNC uploading a strange and awkward MIF that hasn't been approved. So once it gets all the approvals, then it can go out for the search process. Now, there are some exceptions to what I've just said. What I just described is the ordinary circumstance for permanent pastoral positions. For temporary pastoral positions, such as interim pastor or what used to be called supply pastors, that is actually an act of the session. And later in this training, we'll describe the difference between a temporary and a permanent position and what the special rules are for each category of pastor. There's also a category of pastor called a designated pastor, in which the COM gives to the session or gives to the PNC a limited number of candidates. Essentially, we do the search and we give them the finalist, and then they interview the finalists. Usually it's between 2 and 5 candidates, and then a designated pastor is elected by the congregation. And we'll go over those rules later on. But the key information for now is the PNC is an act of the congregation, and their first step is to write a MIF, and the COM liaison's first step is to train them in that process. This has been a long presentation. I thank you for your patience. I've thrown a lot of material your way. There's a lot of information to manage and to sort through. I guess you have questions. If so, let the discussion begin.